All right, so we'll get started. Welcome everyone to our Debate 301 showcase and awards ceremony. This is Coach Austin and myself and Coach Savoy had the pleasure of working with the students this week. We split our showcase ceremony into two groups because we do have a large class. There are 12 of us total, and with the showcase debates, we wanted to make sure that we could, start on time and end at a reasonable time, because I know you guys are busy and have a lot going on. So we do appreciate you joining us this afternoon. And with that, we're gonna get underway. All right, so this is our full class. Half of us are here at the moment. So the way that the class was set up is we had 12 students total, which is a pretty big class for a virtual environment. But it was it was great to work with this group of students in particular. This is the second straight week that Capital has run a Debate 301, sort of we called it a capstone class, because I believe just about all 12 of these students had done at least one virtual class earlier in the summer. So they were coming in with a good understanding of how to navigate the technology, how to adapt to a full day online debate and public speaking experience. And they also had a pretty good understanding coming in of our debate resolution. So we really did hit the ground running this week. We debated a total of 11 rounds over the course of the first 4 days of camp, starting on Monday afternoon with our first round. And then we debated 3 or 4 times Tuesday, Wednesday, and yesterday. And then we had our semifinals and finals this morning before lunch. So it was really an action-packed week, and the kids really hit the ground running from the very first minute. And if you look at those circumstances, it would be very easy for them to kind of I don't even know how to describe it. It would be very easy for them to get very stressed or overwork themselves and really burn out a little bit. But these guys really gave it an incredible effort, worked extremely hard over the course of the week, and turned in just a really good performance across the board. And the improvement that they showed between Monday and the end of the day yesterday was really incredible. Over the course of 4 days, they really implemented a lot of the strategies and skills that they've learned so far this summer. They really worked incredibly hard on their cases. They worked incredibly hard on the other speeches, and it turned into a really great, really competitive tournament. And everyone gave it their best effort, and I think they did a fantastic job. So this was our class, and it really was a real pleasure to work with them from the beginning. I know Coach Jonathan and I could not be prouder of them and the effort that they put forth over the course of the last 4.5 days. So we're going to move into the award certificates, where we'll introduce each of the 6 students who are with us right now, and we'll talk a little bit about them and their success this week. Okay, starting with this young lady who this was the first time I worked with her this summer, and she really got off to a great start from the very beginning. Asked really great questions, always eager to improve herself, and always eager to get feedback from the judges. And she actually is one of our tournament finalists. So she competed this morning in the semifinals, was victorious in the semifinals, and was one of our class finalists. And we'll see later whether or not she is the winner of our tournament. So she did a great job really from the very beginning. Very strong record in our round robin tournament, and rode that all the way to a finals position. Okay, so great job this week, Aria Gartside Vats. Great job, Aria. This young man is fantastic as well. This is the second time I've worked with him this summer, so I've really seen a lot of improvement from him over the course of the summer. And he was talking earlier this week about the other debate experience he's had this summer. He's really thrown himself into debate and has gotten, I can tell, very comfortable with speaking, especially in this virtual environment. And I think that will, of course, translate to live tournaments and live debating when the pandemic subsists. So it was great to work with him multiple times this summer and really see him develop as a debater. He was one of our tournament semifinalists, had a really great record during the round robin, and earned himself a semifinals position. Brae Sadler. Excellent job, Ray. It was great working with you this summer. All right, and this young lady, she told me yesterday that she comes from more of a math and science background, and I can definitely see why, because her knowledge of the scientific, the data side of our debate resolution really was on display. She had a great technical case, really did a great job of getting to the root of the technical side that this topic brings about, and she did a great job in the tournament as well. She was one of our other semifinalists, so also did a great job in the round robin tournament. Earned herself a lot of wins and earned herself a semifinal position. Great job, Emily Zhang. Great job, Emily. This young man is pretty quiet in our class activities, but I'll tell you, when he debates, it is truly a pleasure to watch. I got to judge him a few times this week, and his public speaking style is so calm, cool, and collective. But he really does a great job of laying out arguments. He did a great job, especially in cross examination, asked really good, really deep, probing questions, and had a really smooth speaking style. So I think he's another one that when we're back to live debating, he has a great future ahead of him because he's cool under pressure. He gets the job done. He did a great job throughout the week. Also racked up a lot of wins and did a great job from start to finish. So excellent job, Owen Kaiser. Great job, Owen. And this young man is our second finalist in our class tournament. So he actually finished the tournament really, really strong, racked up a lot of wins, especially in the second half of the tournament, earned himself a position in the elimination rounds, and earned himself a spot in the final. So this morning it was him versus Aria, and we'll find out later who was victorious in that matchup. So really good speaking style, very passionate speaking style. Really did a great job laying out strong arguments. I had the chance to judge him a few times, and he did an excellent job throughout the week. And his finals position was well deserved. So great job, Siddharth Singhal. Siddharth Singhal. Good job, Siddharth. And last but certainly not least, I would say our class, a little bit of a class clown here, Social Butterfly, did a great job also debating. He and Siddharth are good friends from home, so of course I had to have these two match up against each other in the showcase because I think that's going to be a very entertaining matchup for sure. So really positive influence in our class, I would say. Help keep the mood light. But when it came down to business, he also did a great job in the tournament. He worked really hard as well. So great personality and a great great influence on our class as a whole. All right, so great job, Yash Tripathy. All right, and those are our six debaters, 6 students in our showcase, and Coach Jonathan has the other 6. So these guys did a great job over the course of the week. Very proud of all of them. All right, so before we move into showcases, just got a couple overall sort of general announcements about what's coming up next as we approach the end of the summer. So first, Capital is always very interested in hearing feedback from both parents and students, particularly in these unique circumstances with the pandemic. One thing that we are doing is expanding our online options, especially for Club League, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we definitely want to hear feedback about this virtual camp experience and how it was for you, not only the students but also the parents, so that way we can implement the suggestions that you guys have for us. I've already heard a few suggestions from the students this week about possible changes to either the debate format or other ideas that I think will be very very beneficial. So Capital, I know, takes feedback very seriously. We always want to make sure we're providing the best opportunities and the best experiences for your children and for the students as a whole. So please, any and all feedback is greatly appreciated, and we're working very hard to make sure that you guys have the best experience possible, especially with the unknowns that the pandemic has to offer. We're looking for ways to adapt and make sure that you guys get the best possible experience. All right, so if you want to take that survey, please feel free to do so. All right, so when we talk about things that are coming up next, now we are kind of approaching, or we are kind of towards the end of our debate summer. I think this is the last time that the 301 class, the capstone class, is being offered this summer. But we are offering today, if you guys sign up for Club League today, it's a $100 off coupon. Okay, so if you guys are interested in Club Debate, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but you haven't signed up yet, if you sign up today, it's not $50 off, it's $100 off. And the coupon code is on the Capital website. All right, so if you are interested in continuing your debating with Capital, the camp experience is coming to an end. The summer experience is coming to an end, but Club League is definitely going to be ramped up starting this fall. So there is a discount available for Club, whether it be the fall, the winter, the spring, or all three. All right, so if you go to the Capital website, they'll have the coupon code on the website for discounts for the Club League. All right, and speaking of Club League, as we wind down our summer programming, I can talk to you guys a little bit about Club. So with the Club League, we are definitely ramping it up for the fall because of the ongoing pandemic. We're looking for ways to expand our virtual offerings for you guys. So in the past, Club League was an online program where classes would meet one day a week, usually on Wednesday evenings for an hour. And then we would also offer weekend hours for extra help and tutoring and stuff like that. So we would meet once a week. You would have a debate topic. You would work on your materials, and then every 8 to 10 weeks, we would come together in a live in-person tournament. Usually either in Massachusetts, in North Jersey, or there was a Western region as well. So it's a great opportunity for you guys to continue developing the skills that you have learned this summer in camp or before. If you have previous Capital experience, it's a good way to continue to get comfortable with the virtual learning environment, and also a good way to practice your in-person debating. So now, with the uncertainty of when we can get back to live in-person debating, we have expanded our club opportunities for the fall. So now, instead of only offering classes one night a week, one evening a week, we are looking to expand that, I believe, to 3 nights a week. So we have class offerings on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So it's definitely giving you guys more options, more flexibility with your schedules. And we're also looking to do more frequent debating. Okay, so rather than debating every 8 to 10 weeks in person, we might be offering a tournament, an online tournament once a month, every 4 weeks. So pretty similar to what you guys just went through this week, except this time it would be a one-day tournament, probably, I believe, on Saturdays. All right, so one Saturday a month or so, we would get together and have a in-person, or I'm sorry, a virtual tournament. So there's a quick turnaround, and if you guys enjoyed that sort of rapid-fire debating experience, we'll have that opportunity for you in clubs starting this fall. All right, so I know that the club signups have really exploded over the course of the summer. Last I heard, I think there are around at least 200 kids signed up for club this fall, which is absolutely phenomenal. I've been doing club with Capital for, this is going to be my 5th year starting club with Capital. It's a great experience. It's great to work with kids year round, kids that you meet at summer camp, and then you get to work with them, in club. It's a great way to continue growing the skills that you've learned, and it's a great way to really make friends and form bonds with kids from not only this class or from the camps, the other classes that you've been a part of, but it's a great way to form bonds and experiences with kids from around the country, especially in this virtual environment. It's a great way to work with people from around the country and really hone in on your debate skills if debate is something you're interested in pursuing competitively, whether it be high school or beyond. The club league is a great opportunity to really hone your skills and start thinking about being competitive at the next level. So if you enjoyed this experience, if you enjoyed a lot of debating this week, please consider club. It's a great opportunity, and I know that for me personally, it would be awesome to work with any of you guys again, any and all. So if you have any questions about club, you can email me directly, daustin@capitaldebate.com. Be happy to answer any and all questions you have about the club league. It's a good time, and I'm really excited to see how it looks this fall with all the different options and expanded tournament opportunities. Should be a good time. So I hope to see you guys on the sign up list. Be great. All right. You can also, of course, contact the office with any questions you may have. Team@capitaldebate.com, and then you have the 800 number at the bottom if you want to contact the office with any questions about club or any other opportunities that Capital has. All right. And even if you don't do club, it's always great to hear from students, year round. It's always cool to get those occasional emails from a student who took some of the skills and some of the the things that they learned in camp and applied it, whether it be in school or other activities that they're a part of. That nothing makes me happier than receiving an email from a former camper saying, I did a great oral presentation in a particular class, and I felt so comfortable, and it was so much easier than it used to be, things like that. So if there's ever a time where you do something great, which I'm sure for you guys is pretty frequently, but if you ever do something especially awesome related to debate or public speaking outside of the Capital experience, it's always great to hear from former students. So please feel free to shoot me an email or keep in touch, and it's always good to hear from you guys after this summer experience has ended. Okay. And with that being said, that's enough from me. So we're going to turn it over to you guys. All right, so I'm going to close out the slides. Okay, and turn my camera on for a moment. All right, so now we're going to move into our showcase debates, where the students will debate our resolution for the summer. Okay, and our resolution for the summer is government regulation on social media platforms does more good than harm. Okay, definitely a good, relevant issue, relevant topic that really covers a lot of important issues in society and technology and economics and the Constitution, government, and just covers a lot of big issues. So the way that the showcase rounds work is that we had the students take their speeches, their opening speeches, and they're going to be cut in half. So you're getting more of a headline, main idea version of their main speech. And then their secondary speeches, the refutation and the closings, will also be cut in half. So the rounds as a whole have been cut in half, but this is a good way for them to really showcase the main ideas of their speeches, the main skills in cross-examination, and then give you an idea of what refutation and closing speeches should sound like and what they should look like. So if you haven't heard their full speeches this summer, I would definitely ask for them to put them on display for you guys when this is over or at some point, because they are pretty amazing. So they deserve to be shared in their whole their final version with you guys. But for this experience, we're going to do a slightly modified version, but you'll still get the same ideas, the same points. All right, so our first showcase matchup is going to be Siddharth on the pro versus Yash on the con. All right, so if you guys could turn on your cameras, Siddharth and Yash. All right, very good. And I will also run time for you guys. Prep time we can keep about the same. So about 2 minutes of prep, even though the speeches are shorter. All right, so I will run clock for you guys and we can get started. All right, so Siddharth, when you are ready, you can give your 2-minute pro speech.
Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Abraham Lincoln. Government regulation of social media is a force for good in the world that is necessary given the prevalence of the interference in our elections and terrorist posts circulating on social media. My first point is that foreign agents are interfering in our elections and social media companies are willingly ignoring this. My first source, the Mueller probe, finds that Russian interference in our elections was, quote, sweeping and systematic, and the purpose of this interference was to aid the Trump campaign, damage the Clinton campaign, and sow mistrust in American democracy. Brookings University found that, quote, the impact of Russian active measures in Europe happens to have been somewhat hit and miss, with emphasis on miss. This shows government regulation of social media in the European Union has been effective in warding off Russian interference, whereas we have seen in the United States that Russia's measures to interfere in our elections did in fact aid the Trump campaign and lead them to victory. My second point is that terrorist posts are circulating on social media and the social media companies are doing nothing to stop it. A study by Gabriel Wayman of University of Haifa shows 90% of online terrorism occurs on social media platforms. The Department of Veteran Affairs found that terrorism is not simply about killing others. It's about destroying our sense of well-being and our trust in the government. Tangible harms from terrorism other than death come in the form of, quote, mass sociogenic illness, whose symptoms include loss of consciousness, among others. The impact of this is that deaths, mass illness, and a whole lack of trust in our government and establishment are resulting in social media companies' lack of willingness to regulate organizations that have been designated as terrorist organizations. We need the government to regulate social media because we can stop the interference in our elections and the deaths that are occurring worldwide from terrorism, as well as the psychological impact of terrorism. To review, my arguments have concerned foreign actors interfering in our elections and terrorist posts circulating on social media. Government regulation of social media will do far more good than it will harm, and we need the government to protect our democracy and save us from psychological harm and death, because social media companies have proven they cannot be relied upon to do this. Thank you.
All right, good stuff, Siddharth. Yash, your 1 minute cross X.
So you mentioned that a lot of acts of terrorism are planned through social media.
Yes.
So do you know how many attacks yearly occur are planned through social media? Can you give me a number?
Again, 90% of online terrorism occurs over social media. Considering this, we can understand that 90% of all terrorist attacks are being perpetrated through social media. There is a great psychological impact of terrorism. So it's not only the death that we have to take into account, it's the long-term impacts.
Did you know that the total acts or terrorist attacks have gone down over the past 5 years?
That is a false statement.
Can you prove that?
I can, in fact. The Global Terrorism Database found in the United States, terrorist attacks have actually gone up from 2014 to now, rising from 2006 to now, in fact, rising from 6 in 2006 to about 68 attacks in 2017.
Time. All right, good. Josh, you're opening.
Government regulation of social media companies will be harmful for society. It'll be a massive restriction on US citizens' First Amendment rights. And most social media companies are already doing a good job of keeping their platforms clean and well regulated. My first contention is that social media platforms are doing a good job of clearing things or clearing certain topics from their platforms, such as hate speech, cyberbullying, and graphic and violent content. Twitter and Instagram have integrated systems that take down graphic and violent posts, such as things like acts of terrorism being shown that could be traumatizing to children and adults, and have also put the effort into flagging certain topics related to misinformation, whether it be with with the COVID-19 situation or something else. And recently, Facebook has also taken initiative to ban over 7 million posts related to COVID-19 misinformation. So social media companies are doing a good job of keeping their platforms clean. My second point is that government regulation of social media companies will hurt uh, U.S. citizens' First Amendment rights, specifically freedom of speech and freedom of expression. If the government is given the ability to regulate social media, they can take down whatever posts they want. And when other countries like Singapore that have been given the power to regulate social media through government have not even started off by taking down posts related to things like hate speech and misinformation, but rather started attacking on people's opinions. And Singapore is a democratic republic, which is the same form of government as us. There's no reason that our government wouldn't do the same thing. Therefore, government regulation of social media will do more harm than good. It'll infringe on citizens' First Amendment rights, and most social media does a good job. Therefore, I stand by my resolution. Government regulation of social media companies will not do more good than harm. Thank you.
Okay, good. Siddharth, 1 minute cross.
All right. Are you aware that Singapore is a unitary state and does not have a two-party system?
Yes.
Then, considering unitary states are often associated with oppressive regimes such as that in China, the former Soviet Union, and Turkey, is this example really representative of the United States?
Well, you mentioned China and Russia having a no two-party system, but their forms of government are different from they are not democratic republics. So it's definitely possible that the U.S. will follow Singapore's footsteps.
Technically, Russia is a dictatorship in all but name. Officially, it is a democracy. The same applies to Singapore. Can you prove definitively that Singapore has the capacity for two political parties if it's a unitary state?
It does not.
Can you name any modern Western democracies that have infringed upon citizens' rights when regulating social media?
Not off the top of my head.
Are you aware of the increase in terrorist attacks worldwide concerning that has been facilitated by social media?
Yes.
And are you aware that Twitter did not take down Al Qaeda's Twitter account until the last few years, by which point it had over 7,000 followers.
Yes, but if we let the government regulate social media, it won't change much, as a lot of these terrorist groups can still use secure channels in order to communicate attacks, which wouldn't stop the total number of terrorist attacks.
That's time. That's time.
Prove that?
Mhm.
Can I take 30 seconds of prep, please?
Sure. All right, that's 30.
All right. In my opponent's first contention, he claims that social media companies are already doing a, quote, good job of regulating their own platforms, therefore the government does not need to step in. He cites Facebook removing 7 million posts in regards to COVID-19 misinformation and calls this good work. Facebook receives over 350 million new posts daily. Consider that the COVID-19 pandemic has been flourishing in the United States for the last 5 months. Where was Facebook 5 months ago or 4 months ago to remove this disinformation that was killing hundreds because they believe this fake news? They removed what is only a drop in the bucket of all social media posts that are harming others daily. Facebook is clearly not doing a good enough job of regulating their own platform if they've only removed 7 million out of over billions of posts. My opponent's second contention is that regulating social media will infringe upon our rights. However, this is not true. He cites Singapore. However, Singapore is not a democracy like the United States. It's a unitary state. Modern Western democracies, which my opponent claimed that he was unaware of, my opponent said that he was unaware of any Western democracy that infringed upon citizens' rights when regulating social media. Germany and Australia are two examples of Western democracies that have shown that they will not infringe upon citizens' rights. They have not stopped their citizens' right to protest by regulating, nor have they infringed upon their free speech. Germany and Australia's social media regulation instead fines and penalizes social media companies for clearly illegal content, like terroristic content. If we allow the government to regulate social media, then they can force social media companies to regulate terroristic content. And if they choose not to, then these social media companies will be fined massive amounts. In my opponent's world, social media.
All right, Yash, your refutation.
My opponent's first contention was that there's too much foreign intervention within our votes, such as the 2016 election, which may have caused Trump to win as opposed to Hillary Clinton. But the social media companies have recently started to ban these accounts that may start spreading propaganda, or accounts that may be starting to hack or infiltrate, not necessarily infiltrate, but influence users' votes. So social media is already improving the system. And within my opponent's second point of terrorism, he mentioned that Twitter hasn't banned Al Qaeda's social media page, which has over 7,000 followers, until recently. But that's progress, right? If companies like this continue to be doing good things like banning terrorist accounts, as well as regulating misinformation and taking down violent content that could be traumatizing, as my opponent mentioned, then social media is improving the system, and we would not need the government to step in. And if we did let the government step in, uh, we don't know what they might do. We don't know what they might do with their power to regulate social media. They may take down certain posts that they're not supposed to, and they may not successfully take down posts that they're supposed to take down. Therefore, I stand by my resolution. Government regulation of social media will not do more good than harm. Thank you.
Okay, good. And Siddharth, your 1 minute closing.
Could I take the remainder of my prep, please?
Sure.
All right, I think I'm ready to. James Madison once said, "If men were angels, no government will be necessary." However, men are not angels, and we need the government to regulate social media. My opponent claimed that social media companies have recently been cracking down on Russian troll accounts. However, he has not cited any evidence that proves this, and thus, Judge, I ask you not to take this into account. Next, my opponent claims that recently social media companies have begun to crack down on disinformation and terror, which is true. However, they have not cracked down nearly enough, nor with enough efficiency. My opponent acts as if the government is directly moderating content, which would let them abuse their power. However, social media regulation means that they're passing laws that make social media companies regulate themselves to the government's satisfaction, meaning that the government will not be able to violate our rights because they're making social media companies take down clearly illegal content. Fake news and hate speech are not illegal. Therefore, the government cannot arbitrarily take anything down under the guise of taking down hate speech or fake news. Whereas terrorism or bullying, for example, is illegal and will thus be taken down. We have to weigh lives and the psychological impact of terrorism, as well as the threat to our very democracy, against the minute chance that the government might, in fact, infringe upon small portions of our freedom. Judge, which is more important? Thousands of lives lost yearly from terrorism, and the psychological impact upon its victims, as well as the destruction of our very democracy, if we negate the resolution or if we affirm the resolution, a minute chance that perhaps the government may, in fact, stop some people from saying certain things. Thank you.
Good. All right, and Yash.
I'll take my prep time.
Okay. All right, time.
My opponent argues that we lose over 1,000 lives a year to terrorism, and that there have been way too many deaths over terrorism caused by social media. However, this is untrue, as the total deaths of terrorism have been going down, and there are a lot more deaths caused by things like misinformation, such as false COVID cures, and hate speech, which is inciting violence and can cause things like depression and suicide. And social media companies have been doing a good job of taking things like taking things like hate speech and information down from their platforms, preventing a lot of these deaths from occurring. And the odds of getting killed in a terrorist attack is less likely than getting struck by lightning. So terrorist deaths and trauma caused by terrorism aren't as prominent, as the total deaths are going down, and any traumatizing videos of maybe things like lynching have also been removed, mainly been removed from social media platforms. Therefore, I stand by the resolution. Government regulation of social media companies will do more good than harm. Thank you. Will not do more good than harm. Thank you.
All right, great job, guys. Good work. So you guys can turn off your mics and cameras. Thank you very much. And our next showcase matchup is going to be Brae on the pro going up against Emily on the con. So two of our semifinalists. Whoa, looking sharp, Brae. Good stuff. All right, so Brae, you're on the pro. So your 2-minute pro speech when you are ready.
Sorry, I just need to get my camera adjusted. Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Okay, this is a speech of 3 minutes in length, correct?
2 minutes, roughly
2
2
minutes?
minutes. Yep.
2 minutes in length, and I'll begin when my judge and the negation is given a thumbs up. We're good?
Thumbs up.
Liberty depends on freedom of the press, that which cannot be limited without being destroyed. President Thomas Jefferson. One of the greatest controversies as we move forward into this new digital era is how we will protect Americans' freedom of speech online. And in order to do that, I urge you to vote in affirmation of the resolution. Government regulation of social media companies does more good than harm in the name of protecting American freedom on the internet. Firstly, because we need to stop foreign actors from interfering in American free speech, because foreign countries have proven themselves more than willing to interfere in Americans' right to free speech. According to the Foundation for Economic Education and Forbes magazine, in 2018 and 2017 respectively, found that both the European Union and the People's Republic of China have repeatedly attempted to gain the ability to censor anybody on social media who goes against their government, even foreigners. In fact, we've already seen some of the impacts of this, as the Wall Street Journal reports in January of 2017 that Facebook is currently developing a censorship software that, in order to enter back into the Chinese marketplace, that will not only affect Chinese citizens but also people across the entire world. We've also seen, as the Foundation for Economic Education reports earlier this year, that we've already seen American companies continually bowing down to the Chinese government, while foreign governments will be able to censor free speech online, compromising the integrity of our republic. Americans will be crossed in the crossbars, and our freedom of speech will go down with it, since it cannot be limited. I urge you to vote in affirmation of the resolution and government regulation of social media companies does more good than harm in the name of protecting American liberty on the internet. Thank you.
Okay, Emily, your 1-minute cross-ex.
So could the government limit freedom of speech by deleting dissenting opinion on social media?
Well, I mean, once again, I'm not going to be naive here. It could do that, but we've seen that our current government, under this current constitution, is best protected against doing that. System checks and balances, the Constitution, our system of federalism have all worked effectively against government abuse in the past.
Are you aware that our nation's own history shows that when given the power to silence dissenting opinion,
Yes, but
our government can?
But if we look at those examples, the Sedition Act, the Civil War, and the House Committee of Un-American Affairs, each of those only lasted a short period of time and was later then, and those problems were later fixed by our system of federalism, our constitution, our system of checks and balances.
Are you aware that social media is already taking down harmful content? For example, Facebook took down 7 million accounts that were tweeting misinformation.
Yes, I am. I'm not saying that these companies cannot regulate themselves. The problem is that these companies are shutting down those that they disagree with, and in order to bow down to foreign governments such as China, are censoring Americans' free speech online.
Okay, time. Good. All right, Emily, you're opening. 2 minutes.
Okay. According to the SDA law firm, in the UAE, all local mass media must respect the regime, its symbols, and its political system. Government regulation would let the government do just that, filter content on social media so it respects its interests, infringing on our fundamental human rights. Thus, I negate the resolution. Government regulation of social media companies does more good than harm. First, government regulation would allow it to restrict free speech. This is because it could suppress people or ideas it disagrees with. According to Columbia University, Trump blocked people from accessing his Twitter account on the grounds that they posted critical comments that he disliked, violating the First Amendment. As you can see, our system of checks and balances is not perfect, and the government can delete posts it disagrees with, silencing the voices of their citizens. Furthermore, according to the Cato Institute, ambiguous terms regarding hate speech may be interpreted by the government to suppress legitimate dissenting speech. As such, the government will silence the voices of anyone who speaks out against them just by mislabeling their posts as hate speech. There have been examples of this across North Africa and the Middle East. According to the University of Washington, during the Arab Spring, social media carried a cascade of messages about freedom and democracy. And ironically, government efforts to crack down on social media may have incited more public activism. As you can see, the government knows the value and wants to limit social media. In the Middle East, people are able to voice their opinion on social media, even though the government silenced and censored newspapers. Clearly, government regulation of social media would allow governments to abuse their power by silencing the citizens' opinions. After all, the central idea of a democracy is that the power of the government is based upon the consent of the governed. If the government regulates social media, they are deleting and filtering that consent. If you don't want to trade our democracy for a government like this, I urge you to vote con.
Okay. And Brae, your 1 minute cross-ex.
Okay, let me just stand up and we can begin. Yeah, we're ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, good speech, Emily. So I want to address your main contentions first. So in your first contention, you talk about how the government would silence dissenting opinions and use President Trump as a specific example. Was President Trump blocking people from commenting on his tweets on his own personal Twitter account or banning people from using Twitter altogether?
Trump did not ban people from accessing Twitter altogether. However, he did ban him from posting dissenting tweets on his account, which shows that our system of checks and balances is not perfect.
Isn't Trump, as a citizen of the United States, entitled to use his social media accounts as he likes, and that can indeed be used to block people from calling him a racist on his own account?
Yes, he is allowed to use social media, but I don't think he is allowed to block people.
Is he using government power to enforce this, or simply the systems already in the Twitter software?
He cannot access Twitter, but my point is that Trump is part of the executive branch, and he was blocking citizens from posting dissenting opinions.
Time. Good. All right, Brae, your
I have a minute.
refutation. Yes.
Okay, give me 30 seconds.
Sure. All right.
Okay. Sec. And let me see if I can get better lighting this one. Sorry.
You're good. No problem.
Okay, are we good?
Yes.
Before we continue, I want to address some of the arguments that my opponent has made. Firstly, their contention concerning the possibility that dissenting opinions can and will be persecuted. So I have a couple of objections to this. Firstly, the negation offered the example of President Trump of banning people from replying to many of his tweets. Let us understand that President Trump never used any government force to back up this decision. In fact, he, as a personal citizen on his own personal account, banned people from replying. Many people do this every day, and it's not a show of force. The government will persecute the dissenting opinion. Secondly, they mentioned how there's a possibility of the government persecuting the dissenting opinion and banning police likelihood. Let us understand, though, that our government has been designed for this. It is designed to make sure a system of checks and balances has a system of federalism and a constitution. While yes, our political system has never been perfect, it has been the most reliable on making sure that the government has not abused its power. We talk about the Arab Spring, where many dissenters in companies such as UAE used as a platform to advocate for freedom. Let us understand, though, that these social media companies are putting the ability for dissenting opinions all around the world at risk by bowing down to places such as China. And with that, both the dissenters in the UAE and American citizens will be put in jeopardy of losing their free speech. I urge you to vote in negation of the resolution, in affirmation of the resolution. Government regulation of social media companies is more good than harm in the name of protecting American freedom online. Thank you.
Okay. Emily, your refutation?
Can I take some prep time?
Sure.
Okay, so I think I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay, in this speech, I will address my opponent's key points. In my opponent's contention, my opponent claims that social media companies can bow down to foreign actors, putting our liberty at risk. However, social media companies can censor and regulate themselves perfectly fine. For example, Facebook removed 7 million accounts that were tweeting dangerous misinformation about COVID-19, such as cures and claims that wearing masks can make you sick, which is clearly false and poses an imminent danger. During Facebook's executive Mark Zuckerberg's interview with members of Congress, these congressional members were genuinely confused at the complicated algorithms behind these social media companies, showing that our government is ineffective at regulating social media and that it will always delete dissenting opinion, even though we have a system of checks and balances. History shows that our system of checks and balances is definitely not perfect. And my opponent advocates for a world where freedom of speech is devalued, and our government can easily block out dissenting opinion. If you do not want to live in this world, then I urge you to vote con. Thank you.
Okay. And closings, starting with Brae.
Can you give me my final 30 seconds?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, that's time.
Okay. This is a speech of 1 minute, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'll begin when the negation and my judge are ready.
Yes.
Okay. I urge you to vote on affirmation of the resolution. Government regulation of social media companies does more good than harm in the name of protecting American free speech on the internet. Because we need to prevent foreign governments from being able to cancel out American free speech online. We've seen that foreign countries are more than willing to shut down American free speech. My opponent says that companies can regulate themselves. That's not the issue. I've already said is that these companies can regulate themselves. The problem is they'll be regulated according to the whims of foreign governments, and will therefore have Americans come to the crossfire, destroying their freedom of speech. The affirmation would have you believe that I believe that the federal government should be able to shut down anybody it wants. But let us understand that the negation, unfortunately, will result in American free speech online being shut down because companies will abide by China and not the United States. In order to preserve American free speech, we need to extend these protections. I urge you to vote in affirmation of the resolution. Government regulation of social media companies is more good than harm in order to protect American free speech online. Because at the end of the day, without free speech, our liberty will fail. Thank you.
All right, and Emily.
I would like to take the remaining of my prep time.
Okay. All right, time.
Okay, so starting time now. According to George Santayana, those who do not remember history are condemned to repeat it. We know from various examples from our own nation's history, such as the Sedition Act, that our government will abuse its power when given the chance, and that our checks and balances system is not perfect. I propose that the government should not regulate social media platforms because it would limit our freedom of speech. My opponent gave an example that foreign governments can also limit our freedom of speech. My opponent refuses to believe that social media companies are working to make their platform safer for their users. For example, Facebook has taken down 7 million posts about misinformation about COVID-19. Our government should serve the people and their opinions. The central idea of a democracy is that every single citizen has their voice in the decision our government makes. Giving the government the power to silence those voices on social media, the place where millions of people voice their opinions, if our government does that, our government no longer represents a democracy. Therefore, I urge a calm ballot. Thank you.
All right, great job, guys. Good stuff. All right, so you guys can turn off your mics and cameras. And our third and final showcase matchup is going to be Owen on the pro against Aria on the con. So Owen and Aria, you can turn your cameras on. And Owen, when you're ready, you can give your 2-minute opening.
Government regulation will undoubtedly be better than no government regulation. Currently, social media companies are letting terrorism and dangerous misinformation that incites violence go unnoticed and unchecked. It is imperative that the government step in and regulate this, not to control our speech or to stop protests, but instead to keep us, the American people much safer as a whole. For my first point about misinformation, without government intervention, this misinformation may go unregulated or unnoticed, which will have problems in the real world, not just online. A good example of this was when posts spreading violent misinformation, inciting violence, were not taken down, which led to real-world attacks on minorities. Sheriff Frankel from the New York Times writes, Facebook is largely responsible for episodes in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and India, in which rumors that spread on Facebook led to real-world attacks on ethnic minorities. While this is awful by itself, by far the worst example of hate and violence powered through Facebook was the Myanmar genocide. Evelyn Duke, a Harvard law student, writes, The Times writes that the military harnessed Facebook over a period of years to disseminate hate propaganda, false news, and inflammatory posts. The story adds to the horrors noted about the ongoing violence in Myanmar, but it should also complicate the ongoing debate about Facebook's role and responsibility for spreading hate and exacerbating conflict in Myanmar and other developing countries. This problem especially impacts those already being targeted by hate, and because Facebook didn't take down these violent posts, their situation got that much worse. For my second argument regarding terrorism, terrorists use social media to spread their message and broadcast their attacks. Max Boot, an author and editorialist from the Washington Post, said, The New Zealand massacre video, which appeared to have been recorded with a GoPro helmet camera, was announced on Fringe Chatroom 8chan, live streamed on Facebook, reposted on Twitter and YouTube, and discussed on Reddit. This problem impacts the victims' families, but also encourages other terrorists to carry out similar attacks. This, however, is not the only problem regarding terrorism and social media, because terrorists also use social media to recruit people to join their cause. Max Boot also said, after Zarqawi's death, the Islamic State became even more adept at using social media to inspire lone wolf jihadists to carry out attacks in the West. If there are more terrorist attacks as a whole, then we as a society are more vulnerable to terrorist attacks. Government regulation is simply something necessary when an industry or corporation is incompetent at regulating themselves. For example, the meat industry in the early 20th century. The point of regulation is not to restrict our rights or restrict our freedom, but instead to make us as a whole much safer. Thank you.
All right, good stuff. Aria, your 1 minute cross-ex.
You said that social media companies are letting terrorism and violence unnoticed and that violence would not be taken down. But if the social media companies, according to you, do not do this, why would the government?
Well, I think that frankly, the government would have our best interests at heart. I know this may be controversial, but I think implementing a tax-based system, while we tax pretty much social media companies, terrorist posts don't get taken down within a certain amount of time. And if social media companies follow these, then there really should be no problem. There's less terrorist content, and we as an American society are safer.
But do you think that putting in these tax systems in could stop social media companies from being able to innovate to regulate their platforms?
It would certainly constrain its expansion. However, I think it's worth it in order to make sure these social media companies are taking down violent and illegal content.
Time. Good.
Thank you.
All right, Aria, your 2 minute opening.
Would you rather self-regulate and protect your First Amendment rights, or have the government take that away? Government regulation of social media can do harm to the US, and that's why I negate the resolution that government regulation should be placed on social media. People are better off self-regulating because throughout history, governments have abused their powers to control media to support their own interests. For example, Trump says that Twitter was completely stifling free speech by taking down racism he has posted. However, according to The Verge, the first is defining the First Amendment simply as the right to express and debate ideas, carefully not mentioning that the First Amendment also bars forcing people or companies to speak. Because, ironically, Trump's entire goal is forcing social platforms to distribute speech they would otherwise moderate. This shows how, if the government were to regulate, they would regulate to their own biases and make sure that hate speech or terrorist actions that they believe in wouldn't be taken down if it supports their cause. Also, according to Foreign Policy on July 2020, social media companies have made great strides in preventing foreign political interference. Some examples are Facebook removing millions of content proactively, Twitter bans millions of bots per week and has banned all paid ads, and Reddit's censorship AI has a 99% proactive detection rate, and Reddit has also created an ad tracker. Corruption will follow government regulation, and the government may keep racism and fake news up, and this can cause people to get hurt, mentally and physically. However, self-regulation and a lack of government regulation can stop this. Lastly, legislation stops innovation. If we are told to color inside the lines, are we thinking outside the box? Under US legislation, would my mother have turned stem cells into cartilage to help tons of people? No. YouTube has over 500 hours of content uploaded per minute, and they would need at least 150,000 people to regulate, and it might take hours to have a video approved. Instead, YouTube innovated, and regulation is all done by AI and machine learning. Tech companies need the freedom to exist without legislation to ensure greater innovation of finding methods to regulate themselves. Government regulation can block free speech and sway social media from equality. We shouldn't be stopped from speaking out against what's right or harmed by fake news and racism. That's why I strongly urge you to vote con.
All right, good stuff. Owen, your cross X.
Awesome. I noticed you said that the government would keep up misinformation and hate speech. Do you believe there should be hate speech laws?
I believe that social media companies can do well enough in regulating hate speech and taking it down. For example, in my speech, I listed many things that Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit have all done to take down posts with foreign political interference and with hate speech itself. So I don't believe that government regulation or government laws are needed.
If the government simply banned illegal speech, we're not talking about misinformation, simply misinformation inciting violence or defamation of character, would you agree that that doesn't violate the First Amendment?
If the government were to regulate illegal speech, if social media companies are already doing that well enough, then what would the point be of government regulation? We might not have the government regulate at all if they were to just do that. So I believe that though it might not violate the First Amendment, that would lose all purpose, and that means that there would no need for government regulation.
Time. Good.
All right, thank you.
All right, Owen, your minute and a half refutation.
Awesome. My opponent has stated that government regulation could violate the First Amendment and could create government interference in our daily lives. I'll refute both of these claims, starting with the first one regarding political bias. This is a common argument saying that the government would be biased against anyone that goes against it. For example, people who are speaking out against it or protesting the government. However, in a system based on taxes, like they do in Germany or Australia, and in a lot of countries in the EU, it is almost impossible to be biased, as they are simply taking down content that is already illegal, such as copyright infringement, defamation of character, or people inciting violence. For example, Australia, from the BBC.com, Australia passed the Sharing of Important Violent Material Act in 2009, introducing criminal penalties for tech executives up to 3 years and financial penalties worth up to 10% of the company's global turnover. Another example would be Germany, also from the BBC.com. Germany's NetzDG law came into effect at the beginning of 2018. Individuals may be fined up to 5 million and corporations up to 50 million. This ensures that terrorist content is taken off the platform, as well as speech inciting violence, without controlling what we see, controlling the media, or controlling free speech. Another argument my opponent made was that it would violate the First Amendment, and I can understand this worry. However, I'm not proposing we regulate hate speech, as that is incredibly hard to define, and I'm also not encouraging that we outlaw misinformation. We are simply outlawing things or regulating things that are already illegal, such as misinformation that incites violence, inciting violence, defamation of character, or copyright infringement. Simply regulating illegal speech goes against no law we have in our country.
Time.
Now, with all opponents' claims refuted, I have proven why we must regulate social media. Thank you.
All right. And Arya, your refutation?
Can I take a minute of my prep time? We have 2
Sure.
minutes, right?
We can go up close to that point, yes. If you want to run a minute, that's fine.
Okay.
All right.
In my opponent's refutation, he mentions how taxes can stop this bias. However, would the taxes stop it if the taxes are created by people who have biases? The taxes could be based off people's bias, and they might only tax things that disagree with them or agree with opposing ideas. He says that Australia and Germany could be good examples, as they don't control the media and free speech, but they do have government regulation. However, Australia's laws are ambiguous as to what can be known as to what is terrorist or not, and they do not have direct rules on everything. He says that we would only regulate illegal speech. However, the government is already abusing this power in the fact that with the stop and frisk law in New York, 8 out of 10 people are Black people or people of color that are stopped because of the stop and frisk law in New York. So the government is abusing this power. Also, empirical evidence from my father, who ran Google security systems, showed that they were in constant fear of the NSA breaching them. The biggest abuser is not social media companies, but the government itself. Do we trust a government who would do this to the social media companies and to us? Is one death worth legislation? How safe is safe enough? Is it worth giving up all your free speech to the government? That's why I strongly urge a con ballot. Thank you.
All right. And closings.
This debate has been about mainly the First Amendment and political bias, a fear of the government controlling our rights or our freedom of speech. In our first argument, I proved that the government wouldn't do this because our rights are still protected by the First Amendment. Even if, let's say, Donald Trump, I know he called the Black Lives Matter movement a hate symbol or hate group. Just because he thinks that doesn't mean that he can shut down their whole protest. They're still protected by the First Amendment. I think that's really what this debate comes down to. The fact that we as American citizens, even if there's government regulation, our rights are still protected by this firm amendment we have had for hundreds of years. And simply the government taxing social media companies for not taking down terrorism is not going to create problems with this amendment. For the second argument, the political bias one, I proved that social media companies would simply be fined if they didn't take down terrorist posts. Again, our government protects our rights with the First Amendment, so it would be impossible for the government to regulate based on their own political preferences or biases. When you really look at it, let's measure these two arguments. On one hand, there is a fear that the government may be corrupt or maybe, looking out for their own interests. However, there's a lot of hurdles they'd have to go through. They'd first have to get by the fact that our rights are still protected by this amendment, right? And we still have a checks and balances system. And even then, the American people would not accept our rights being taken away. And on the other hand, we could have these social media companies held accountable. There'd be less deaths, less tragedy. In Myanmar, thousands of people died. And Facebook wouldn't listen to people who warned them about this ongoing issue. And because of that, entire villages were burnt to the ground. Men, women, and children were killed. I don't want another thing like this happening again. And if you don't want that either, please vote pro.
All right, and Aria.
Can I take my remaining minute?
Sure. All right.
My opponent said that this argument and debate was mainly about the First Amendment. However, he has negated to mention one of my main arguments, innovation. How are social media companies meant to innovate to create better ways for them to regulate themselves under government laws, which he agreed could possibly restrict them? How are they meant to do that and help protect us better if they are meant to stop and listen to the government? Innovation requires freedom, and it requires the government to step back and let social media companies regulate for themselves. I agree that cyberbullying and terrorism is bad, but so is death by speeding. For example, 20 miles per hour is completely safe, but no one would agree. Government regulation is driven by evidence, and there is zero evidence that government regulation can protect us and help us. And if social media companies can't be held accountable and they're not good enough to do this, I negate that argument because they already regulate well enough. I have listed in my opening speech many examples of things that social media companies have done to regulate and to protect our rights and our freedom. If the government isn't going to regulate well enough or block social media companies from regulating to the standard that they can, do we really want to vote for that? In my world, social media companies regulate, and we get a safe social media platform, but we also get to keep our free speech and the ability to speak out against movements or issues that we believe in. In my opponent's world, we can't do that because the government can regulate with biases and different things. He says that checks and balances would stop that. But the different biases in the checks and balances may actually cause more things to be regulated, more helpful things to be regulated, or less fake news to be regulated.
Time.
That's why I strongly urge you to vote con.
All right. Great job, guys. Great job to all 6 of our showcase debaters. Excellent job, guys. All right, so before we wrap up, it's the moment of truth. We got to see who our tournament winner is. So if I could get everybody to turn their cameras back on. Get everyone's camera back on. Okay. So again, just like the semifinal matchups, this was a very, very close decision. It's a very slim margin, but the winner of our Debate 301 Capstone Mega Tournament is Siddharth. Great job, Siddharth, and great job, Arya. That was a great round to judge earlier. A real pleasure. You guys did a fantastic job, and it was a close decision. All right, so congratulations to Siddharth and to Arya and to all of our competitors. Good work throughout the week. All right, so we are going to wrap things up. So before we log off, I just want to say again, thank you guys for your hard work this week, your excellent effort and cooperation and participation. I hope that you guys have a safe and relaxing, enjoyable rest of your summer and a awesome start to your school year, whatever that may look like. And I truly hope to see you guys again in the future. It would be great to work with any or all of you again, and I hope to be able to do that. All right, so goodbye, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your summer. I hope to see you guys again real soon. Good job to all parents. Thank you for attending. I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.